Hi there and welcome back, my friends, to Torment, Tides of Numenera. And we've come here fleeing from the sorrow from Mirlavest, and we've had now a strange deal with that Dracogen. Must recover an artifact from him, from one of the tendrils of the bloom. That apparently is deactivated, but for now, let's level up our heroes. Disable the tutorials, yes. What should we increase? Our intellect pool is pretty good. We could increase edge. That has always been, I think, a good way. An ability or skill is always nice too, but edge is really nice. Could edge our intellect once more. Let's do that. 2 edge on the intellect, and the rest of the edges, if we can go for more edges, we go to this. But for now, we can go onslaught. That's an ability, right? Yeah, we want a better onslaught. And we just need a little bit of that, and we should at least have one weapon, so to say. That will be that, and the rest will go into the skills. So see what Calistique will be able to do. Yeah, also onslaught here. I have 2 edge in intellect. Speed, nah, that's not good. We'll increase stat pools, maybe. And why not? We could increase the might. We cannot increase the might, indeed. Let's increase the speed then. And here we go. Tibia. And go for a sucker punch. Would be nice. Quick fingers, we have Rin for that now. Rin. God of hiding, resourceful, cloak of Har. Cipher use would be something, and running would be nice too. Let's see. We can only increase edge or extra effort. As she's so quick, we could give an edge to speed. Well, that makes sense, I hope. And now, we must find a place to heal. Can you help with that, Dracogen? Dragon's flat eyes rove quickly across you, measuring and studying in a glance. He smiles warmly, but his eyes remain hard. You return, and more quickly than I had anticipated. Do you have something for me, perhaps? Perhaps I can do something for you? Yeah, I've got questions. They are within my power to answer, and if they do not come with a price, ask away, my friend. We have... Yeah, we could talk about some people of the bloom. Not frequently indulge in gossip, but I see no harm in answering your questions. Can you tell me about the other people in this chamber? Voice lowers conspiratorially. You heard none of this from me, of course. Let me summarize. Near the well, you will find Skady, a small-time merchant. She seems different of late, though why I cannot say. In the fighting ring near her, see an eons-old killing construct waits for prey. Avoid it unless you wish to die. Gaze shifts near the great door to the fortress. You'll see Bruska, the Memovira's hand and fist, a particular friend of mine, though not particularly friendly to others, just as she wants it. He gestures then the slaver Parsim Flint, who claims to abide by the rules. Untrue, of course. You have the shins. Of the others, my heart rests with Kian. Is that the proper term? No, I empathize with her. She's here through no fault of her own, a victim of chance, a kind spirit, and likely a dead one soon. And what about this area? Why do you remain here in particular? I remain here because a great number of things and people emerge from this particular entrance into the bloom. I am equipped to deal with them, my friend, and to help with their needs, for I have traveled far and know much of the world if they prove hostile. Smile turns dangerous. I am equipped for that too. Perhaps you will see what I mean someday. Good to know. Thank you and farewell. Well, let's see if we can... So these shanties are constructed entirely of tanned bloom flesh with a framework of harvested bone and gristle.
Allow me.
What are these shadows here? You take the money, just leave me alone. That's Kian. What about her? A woman barefoot and in rags stands defensively beside her tent. Despite her obvious poverty, she crosses her arms and holds her chin high. And what do you want? Canthos, another dangerous-looking one. Gauze, is there no end to the predators in this place? Who are those people who ran off? She points her chin in the direction of the tunnel that leads out of the courtyard. They are called Delny and Vrang. They've been squeezing money out of me for months. Protection, they call it. Though obviously they only mean from them. I wish I could do more than simply cave to their demands, but as you can see, I'm not exactly equipped to defend myself. All I can do to survive. Maybe I can help. Where did they go? They crawl out of a hole somewhere deeper in the bloom. Little Nilyesh, I think it's called. I'm not the sort to wish violence upon anyone, even people like them, but I hope something happens to stop them. Scanthos, I'm so naive, hoping for help. There's no harm in pointing one potential thug to another. Tell me about yourself, Kian. He gives a weak smile and curtsy. My name is Kian, the gloom's most pitiable storyteller, self-styled innkeeper. Oh, though I admit that inn is far too fine a word for my little tent. Still, I can provide a meal, a bedroll, and at least a modicum of entertainment in the form of tales from my homeland. Before I came here, I was a noblewoman, believe it or not, a courtier from Stirthal. She gets a faraway look in her eyes. It feels like a previous life. I wonder if I'll ever find my way back. She shakes her head. I suspect not. Henceforth, even if I could leave the bloom and learn the direction of the steadfast, the journey itself would be lethal. And how did you get here? You've seen the Katina, I assume. She gestures broadly at the massive broken vehicle behind her, being slowly subsumed by bloom flesh. It's a kind of magical carriage, capable of traveling great distances by skipping over the space in between. Governor Murray's ex-priests determined that it came through Stirthal on a very precise schedule. It would appear at one of a few locations near Stirthal every 73 hours. Well, among the nobles it became a sort of adventure. We would dare one another to board the Katina, or even hold parties at a location where it was scheduled to appear. It was exciting. I knew people who went on such journeys and came back with the most wonderful tales. They spent a couple of days meeting strange, fascinating people, as visiting wild locales. Some, I'm fairly certain, were not even in the ninth world. I had to see for myself. Scanthos, Isaac always had the most romantic tales, clouds of crystal, Piccola's shimmering fields, a dome of water in the desert, and she's a storyteller, I see. About a year ago, my friends and I threw a Katina Gala in anticipation of its arrival, so it's not that long, right? We packed and dressed for adventure, and when the carriage arrived, we boarded immediately. She clasps her hands in front of her and sighs. Sadly, that was the Katina's final journey. It crashed here. tunneling through part of the bloom. Most of the passengers were killed in the crash and the rest in the months since. I am all that's left of that voyage. And thoughts I only wished for a tale half as romantic as his were. Sadly, that will never be. A very strong person to have survived for so long. I never considered myself strong. If I was truly strong, I might have kept the others alive too, she sighs, but thank you. And where's Sturthal? Hundreds of kilometers from here, from what I've learned. As I understand it, the bloom is located in what we in Sturthal call the Beyond. Or actually, beyond the Beyond, as I had never heard of the Segas Protectorate, or any of the places people talk about here. Sturthal is one of the largest cities in the Steadfast. It perches on the edge of an enormous rift in the ground called Voil Chasm. Some streets and buildings even protrude from the cliff sides, not unlike Yosega's cliffs as I understand it. It's a cultural jewel in an otherwise war-torn nation. Look at her closely. You notice immediately that her rags are actually made of a high-quality fabric. It appears that they were once a fine green dress or gown, though it is now filthy and torn. She catches you looking and straightens her posture, seeming almost regal for a moment. We'd like to sleep here, but not right now. Here. I'd love to see if we can heal ourselves, for example.
Yes. Thank you.
Uh-huh. 4 out of 5 uses per day.
All right.
Remaining. Yeah.
I can breathe again.
We'll heal ourselves up
Forward.
and then
Onward.
rest a bit, I guess.
Shall we? My thanks.
Where next?
What can we do here? Okay, flex skill.
Yes, child.
Oh, we can heal once again. Okay, let's heal ourselves
Here.
again.
Now. Thank you.
So, let's ask her if we can sleep her here. I'd like to sleep here. Of course, it will be 65 shins each. 65 shins each, that's... Wow, never mind, farewell. Wow. That's a little bit much. Let's try again. We still have some intellect. We should be okay. What are these exiles doing here? Happening outside in the city. Who runs the council now?
Sure
Okay.
it's safe.
There's Parsim Flint. Talk to that guy. Bloom slaves. The fat little man turns toward you, a wide smile already on his face. Indeed, his smile is unnaturally wide, reaching almost to his ears. You notice that his mouth contains 2 rows of white, well-manicured teeth. Catch me in the midst of an auction, madam. No need to beg pardon, my clients will wait. He then leans forward conspirationally. I find that a short delay in the proceedings gets them talking amongst themselves and sparks their competitive natures. Good for prices. Well, it's even wider if that's possible. Parsim Flint is my name, and the disbursement of so-called slaves to so-called owners for the betterment of both parties is my trade. Lo, Flint. Tibia still dealing in human misery, I see. Listen. Why, if it is no Tibia and another school of fish on the hook, eh? Watch out for this one, friends. He couldn't play it straight on a tightrope. That's nice coming from a swindler like you, says Tibia. Tibia winks at you. Never mind that school of fishline lads, we're only pulling each other's legs. I thought you can't put a school of fish on one hook. Terrible euphemism, terrible. Are we? Doesn't matter. Any friend of Tibia's is a welcome customer of mine. Parson Flint raises his eyebrows expectantly. What sort of slave are you looking for? Stig leans into you. These slaves are lucky, frankly. Consignments of the condemned have been known to go missing. Usually when vivisectionists are flush with shins and require more advanced subjects than mere animals. This is practically humane. What are my options? Let's just talk. Well, Flint puffs himself up, which makes him look a good deal fatter, but not a bit taller. I have all the major crimes represented here. Murder, of course, that's a given, but also graft, assault, treason, burglary, and conspiracy. To commit all of those crimes, the foulest sort of predators, that's my guarantee to you. They come all manner of emotional disorders, if that's what you're seeking. I'll find you a slave who caters to the needs of your maw, whatever it wants. Rin tugs urgently at your garment. You glance down at her. You have to buy one. Buy all of them if you can. Parson Flint notices the little girl for the first time. What a darling child you have here, and smart too. Are you looking forward to feeding your slaves to a maw, my dear? Rin, not for a maw, Rin whispers, ignoring the little man. We have to set them free. Maybe you'd better explain how slavery works around here. Certainly. These slaves, Flint nods at the bedraggled men and women in the pit, are convicts of the foulest sort. They're in the very dregs of Sega's cliffs and her surrounding communities. In order to pay their debt to society, many choose bloom slavery instead of prison or execution. These individuals are given to me, and I sell them to the enterprising merchants who ply the bloom. A magnanimous arrangement, scan thoughts, to think that execution is the only option in some lands. Usually, my clients come to me with specific requirements. Every maw has its own unique tastes, you see, and it won't open until it gets precisely what it wants. So I offer an appropriate slave, and they feed that slave to the maw. And everyone is happy. Flint grins, both rows of teeth shining whitely from inside his enormous mouth. So these slaves are all criminals? Of varying sorts, yes, the more vicious the better, at least as far as my clients are concerned. Flint leans toward you again, his voice falling to a theatrical whisper. The bloom has a taste for the criminal element. Dangerous, predatory sorts of people draw its attention, sometimes for the better, sometimes for worse. And they volunteer to be eaten? And blinks, apparently taken aback. They're desperate people, and being fed to the bloom is not a death sentence. Well, not always. Sometimes the bloom only devours certain aspects of a person, and they're entirely changed for the better, or it takes a small trivial part of them, an eye or half a stomach, or their ability to feel love, and spits them out into another world, where they can start their lives anew. Flint beams at the thought of it all. Once a maw feeds on a slave, that slave is free. That's the law, mind you, unless the Murdens get hold of you. Flint crinkles his nose in disgust. They don't give a bird's turd about such things. The Murdens. What's a maw anyway? Maws are the mouse of the bloom, my friend. Sometimes they lead to other worlds, or to hidden pockets elsewhere in the bloom. One never knows, but that's part of the fun, you see. And how do you know what a maw wants? But that is the question. Sometimes you can puzzle it out on your own by watching the maw, observing the behavior of its tongues. Wrinkles his nose, a disgusting business altogether. Better to ask someone who's been here for a long time. They're barking mad, most of them. They have an uncanny sense of the bloom's desires. Some of them claim to hear the voice of the bloom in their mind. Hearing the voice of the bloom, ha! Flint whistles and waggles his finger at his head. That's when you know you're in trouble. Well, Dracogan told me that the moors have been closing. Ah, yes, they are closing, disappearing, changing destinations and behaving badly all around. Finn glances over at the guards, his smile faltering. That sort of thing is better to say in a low voice, preferably far away from the Memoira's lugs, or they might get the idea that you're blaming her for the problem. Scan thoughts Dracogan. What does this young woman have to do with that chiseler? And she is supposed to have some sort of influence over this giant sack of angry flesh, so who knows, maybe it is her fault, Memovira's fault, but I would never say such a thing. He smiles beatifically. Well, we've got other questions. That is so. Indeed, ask them. What are you exactly, an auctioneer? Indeed not, madam. I am a public servant. My work is indispensable to the fair city of Sega's Cliffs. I help these unfortunate wretches, he gestures at the slaves in the pit, pay their debt to society, as it were. Basically, you're an auctioneer. And bristles, but he keeps smiling. As I said, I'm a public servant, madam. If not for my work, the criminal elements of Sega's Cliffs would have no choice but to rot in prison or die by the axe in the days of our uncivilized ancestors. How much does it cost to buy a slave? His eyes light up. If his smile got any wider, it would tear itself off his face and go scampering away. So you're a registered merchant, are you? Got the proper documents, signed and stamped in all the right places? We don't need official documents to make a deal. One of Flint's eyebrows raises absurdly high. Ridiculous, he explains. Of course I need official documentation. Do you take me for a scuffler, madam? Scan thoughts, of course. She's not a licensed buyer. Suddenly Flint lowers his voice and leans toward you. Sorry, I have to keep up appearances. In truth, I would be happy to make a deal, so long as the relevant authorities are none the wiser. And thought, as Mum used to say, with a disappointment comes great opportunity. Go on. One of my slaves is not attracting any buyers. He's a young fellow, fresh from the streets of Segas, but I fear he's only a thief. Not a murderer or a sadist at all. You can imagine how that's gone over with my clients. Since I cannot sell him in a legitimate manner, I'm forced to go under the proverbial table. You may have him for a mere 400 shins, no returns, refunds, or restitution. Flint flashes a disturbingly wide and toothy grin. Scan thoughts, I can't imagine what more would even want the boy. Alright, we need to know more about him. Do we know how he ended up here? Flint produces a sheaf of papers from a voluminous pocket and shuffles through them, finally settling upon one. His eyes scan the page. Let's see here. Third time arrested for thievery. Minimal resistance to arresting levy. Curious, non-violent offenders aren't usually considered for Bloom slavery, but he volunteered anyway. Some of them do, you know, if they're running from something or if they're barking mad. Little man shrugs, stuffing the papers back into his pocket. Can I see him first? Certainly. Just over here, Flint gestures toward one of the bedraggled slaves in the pit, a young man, well-built, with a surprisingly sober expression given his condition. Oh, I'll give you 250. That slave isn't a hardened criminals. Nobody is going to give you a better offer. What about the other slaves? Yeah, let's ask that first. Not for sale. Not under any circumstances, I'm afraid. The little man shakes his head sorrowfully and with such a regretful expression that you could almost believe he cares. I am willing to bend the rules in the case of this one slave only. Memoira will feed me to a moor if I start selling all the slaves to unregistered clients, and I mean that quite literally. Alright, we'll take him off his hands. I'll give you 250. Yeah, let's deceive him. The slave isn't a hardened criminal. Nobody is going to give you a better offer. So we're going to 75% with him, with her 40, with Tybia 65, and with Rin 20. 75% is what we could use. Best we would get. Right? Yes. Let's try. Failed. Eventually someone might. There are more than only one blood, you know, and they don't care who they eat, though I'd hate to see the poor boy fed to one of those Moors. I don't think that's what you really want, underneath all that bluster. You believe you're helping these people, yeah, we know that. You're giving them a second chance. Something like surprise in Parson Flint, or even pride, ripples across the little man's face. Flint straightens, and his features seem softer and brighter. For the first time, it smiles, seems genuine. All right, he says quietly, 250 shins it is, but that offer is conditional on your immediate acceptance. Walk away from this deal, sir, and it is gone for good. And thoughts, damned if she isn't right. Surely none of them deserve a second chance more than that boy. Okay, here you go. 250. Very good indeed. Flint grabs your hand with both of his, shakes it vigorously, and gathers up your shins, shoving them into various pockets and purses. He shakes your hands again, both of them this time, and the deal is struck. And thought, excellent. I never thought I'd get that much for the boy. Rin, next to you, Rin is bouncing on the balls of her feet, doing a poor job of containing a smile. I wanted to make her happy too. Your property shall be extricated from the pit momentarily. I believe his name is Cody. Oh, that's this young man. Maybe Rin knows him. The young man takes a deeper breath, as though preparing himself for something. He looks directly into your eyes. His expression is not merely sober, it's resigned and emotionless, almost dead. So what now? Scan thoughts, this is what you signed up for. Do it, Cody, do it and be free. And we'll talk to Cody in the next episode. Thank you for watching and happy gaming to you. See each other in the next episode when I've got a little refreshment. Happy gaming to you, my friends, and see you soon.